Warning! Warning! Colossal spoilers ahead! I repeat, colossal spoilers ahead! If you have not yet played Deltarune, follow the link in the description below to download and play the game before viewing this video. Or you can just keep watching if you don't really care to play it. Which, I mean, I don't know why you'd be watching this if that's the case. Why am I making this video again? You have been warned! So, this kinda came out of nowhere, didn't it? Goddamn fucking Toby Fox and your cryptic bullshit, making us think this was some survey crap before BOOM! It's my new fucking game, suckers! You've been bamboozled! Well, I mean, it's the first chapter of my new game, so, I mean, close enough. But for what is essentially a piece of shareware, Deltarune has a lot packed into the small time it'll be a part of your life. At least until the next chapter comes out, whenever that happens. So, to answer one of the big questions right away, is Deltarune Undertale 2? I mean, well, not really, but kind of? It's hard to explain. This looks like it takes place in the same world as Undertale did, but things are different? Okay, look, it'd honestly be easier if I start from the beginning. Now, I'm not going to go over the entire game note for note, but I will be showing the opening, and I will be talking about events that happen to correlate to the topic that I'm on at the time. Again, spoilers are inbound, so, tread lightly. So you start the game by creating a character, naming your character, and then putting in your own name on top of that. That looks about right. And then the game promptly tells you to go fuck yourself and drops you in as this guy named Chris. This, oddly familiar looking young man serves as our protagonist for the evening. And by the way, I'm aware that their gender is kept purposefully vague, but I've always referred to them as a guy, so I'm just gonna call them a guy. You can call it whatever you want, but that's what I'm going with, so yeah. Anyway, the game starts out by him being woken up by Toriel. Yep, Toriel is back. So are a lot of familiar faces, actually. Also, Asriel is your brother, and he's off at college right now, and monsters are on the surface, and Frisk is nowhere in sight. So right about now, your gears have ground to a screeching halt, you're thinking, okay, wait, what in the fuck? But, oh, we're just getting started. So after the initial drive-around intro, Toriel drops you off at your high school, where your teacher is apparently Alphys. Yep, it's Alphys. Don't worry, I was just as confused as you probably are. Turns out there's a group project coming up that you have no partner for because you're a loner mama's boy, or girl, with no friends. Well, at least we're starting off on a high note. I don't like the way this bird is looking at me. So after asking around class to see if he could find a partner, suddenly... does the room suddenly feel a lot more murdery to anyone else, or is it just me? This is Susie, and as you could probably tell, she's a moral, upstanding, lovable mophead whom everyone just adores. A terrified Alphys asks her to go get some chalk from the supply closet, presumably just to clear the air of the stench of dried blood for a moment, and then immediately asks you to go with her. Well, I don't see why not. I mean, it's either die an early death today or live to be financially crippled by college debt tomorrow, so fuck it. After leaving the room, you find out that, of course, Susie stole the last piece of chalk and then eats it. Okay. And dumbass Chris doesn't think to stop staring for one moment before Susie turns around and sees that he's caught her in the act. So what follows is the usual high school bully scene. You know, where they slowly and intimidatingly walk up to the meek protagonist, corner them against a wall, talk down to them, dare them to tell the teacher, choke slam them against the lockers, threaten to eat their face off while smiling like a slasher movie villain. Oh, those high school hijinks, am I right? Also what? Please don't hurt my mom. So after being instilled with paralyzing fear, Chris decides it's still the best idea to follow Susie to the supply closet. I mean, after all, what better way to bond with your potential murderer than by following them into a small, dark, and closed space with no escape? But right as you and Susie head down the hall to the closet... You know what? One second, Susie. Just give me a minute. I just need to make a quick call here. Mom, come pick me up right now. This school is fucking haunted! Well, you know what? Just because the closet is leaking with the bleak, featureless visage of the endless void doesn't mean it's not safe. So you and Susie decide to go in together. I mean, what's the worst that can... Oh. No. Wait, never mind, we're alive. And we got some sick-looking armor. Nice! Totally worth waking up in this dark, terrifying hellscape with no visible means of going home.
Okay, don't panic. We've still got our cell phone, so let's just call Mom and... Okay, well, I don't think that's supposed to happen. All right, you know what? I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna go. Where am I going? Hell if I know, but anywhere's better than here. What the fuck is this place? Is this the fucking Shadow Realm? And why are these weird things wiggling at me? Can they stop wiggling at me? Okay, well, them shooting at me is definitely a strong argument for going back to the wiggling. Can we go back to the wiggling? So, after wandering aimlessly through the cold, unfeeling void, you end up finding Susie hiding in a pile of something, looking like she just ate a punk rocker and stole their clothes. She elects and then immediately de-elects to follow you, and you both continue onward. A few steps later, and you both finally come across one of the locals. They're not friendly. Okay, so I'd just like to remind everyone that in the span of about 15 minutes, we've gone from having a nice drive around town with our mom to being chased through the fucking Shadow Realm by a barrage of deadly spade missiles. Slow burner, this game certainly is not. Well, that was fun. So after our lovely brush with death, we come across a strange, dark town with architecture that looks like it jumped straight out of Nightmare Before Christmas, and it's equally as spooky as it is abandoned. Even the question mark shop is abandoned. That's a shame. I really wanted to buy some questions. Why the fuck did I keep that joke in? Jesus Christ. A quick trip up to the castle at the very back of the town has you meeting up with this fellow. I don't know why they're in a cloak, but just roll with it. They introduce themselves as the Prince of the Kingdom of Darkness, and they had evidently been expecting us. They tell you of a legend that's been foretold by time and space. Okay, and that apparently Chris and Susie are a part of it. The legend tells of a balance between light and dark that keeps the world in harmony. But should this balance ever be disrupted? Okay, we've heard this story a million times. Balance between light and dark, disrupting the balance will bring about the end of the world, something, destiny, fate. The legend goes on to say that as the world is on the brink of destruction, 3 heroes of light will appear. A human, a monster, and a prince from the okay, wait, this smells self-inserty. The 3 heroes are foretold to restore balance, banish the angels' heaven, which has not been mentioned up until now, so I don't know why Princely Boy here just name drops it like nothing, but okay, and save the world. Up until now, the big billowing fountain of darkness at the center of the castle we're currently in has given the dark world its form. However, a second fountain has recently appeared, which has begun to shift the power balance between light and dark by expanding the dark world's influence, which is actually the reason we fell into the dark world in the first place. The school supply closet just happened to be one of the few places where the dark world started to bleed over. Their story told the prince beseeches Chris and Susie to become the Delta Warriors, the heroes of legend, and fulfill their foretold destiny to restore harmony to a world facing oblivion. To which Susie says, nah. Which I was completely expecting, to be honest. What I wasn't expecting, however, was what happened immediately afterward.
Surprise, motherfucker!
This is Lancer, and as you can probably guess, he was the one that was attacking us earlier, evidently on orders from his father to do so. Turns out this unseen fatherly figure would very much not like this new fountain of darkness to be destroyed, and wants both Chris and Susie dead in order to protect it. And Lancer here has a profoundly perfect plan to ensure our demise. One witty and slightly terrifying response from Susie later, and we get our first taste of combat, which actually serves as a pretty decent segue into the next talking point of this review. Cue the title card! So as I mentioned at the start of the review, I'm not going to be going over every single event that happens in the game, but I will be going over specific moments that I think fit best into what I'm currently talking about. I'll still be spoiling the heck out of certain parts, but I wanted to first abridge the exposition of the game in order to get us all on the same page. And with that done, I think it's time we start getting a little more analytical. Sound good? Sound good. Now, in Undertale, the gameplay was split into 2 different parts, the overworld and the combat. This is the case with most RPGs like it, but the bulk of Undertale's enjoyment, at least in my opinion, came from the story moments and dialogue that was experienced outside of combat, where you interacted with the characters and explored the world of the underground. The combat in Undertale was pretty simplistic, visually and conceptually. You had a basic battle grid with some black and white sprites showing the enemies. You never saw your own character in combat, much like in the Mother series, or Earthbound for those of us here in the Americas. Enemy attacks were organically dodged via a bullet hell-esque scenario where the attacks were represented by flying objects flying across a small space in the middle of the screen. Fights could either be won by killing enemies, or, as the game heavily encourages you to do, acting in specific ways that made them no longer wish to fight you, at which point you could spare them. It was simple, but it worked well. So I'm guessing we won't need to go over the combat so much, since we'll likely be dealing with the same thing here. This is different. We've got battle animations, the same bullet dodging mechanic as before, but now with a grazing mechanic that ends certain attacks faster and builds a special meter. We've got multiple party members, we got spells, party equipment management, defending, party combos. Holy hell, this game is actually an RPG. I know all that likely doesn't sound very impressive to most RPG fans out there, but coming from this to this is pretty dang nice, I gotta be honest. As fun as the combat in Undertale could be, it had a habit of getting boring kinda quickly. Now, we at least have a bit more variety in what we can actually do in combat while adding in some nice animations to our actions, along with more flavor and humor to be discovered by experimenting with the various acts you can perform on enemies and with your party members. And do you hear that music? This combat and my feelings on it actually serve as a pretty perfect analogy to how I feel about Deltarune overall, and why I do consider it Undertale 2, essentially. It's a completely different story that does not pick up after the first one, even if it does use some familiar characters, but it still does what a good sequel should do. It takes what the first game did well, but does it bigger and better. And it's less than a third the size of Undertale so far. It's only the first chapter, and I was already incredibly impressed by it. Well, the grand majority of it at least. There is one criticism I do have that I think the first game, at least so far, still has over it, but we'll be going over more of that in a bit. Overall, the gameplay in Deltarune is similar to Undertale, but more is added in that makes it just better. Not just the combat, but the overworld has some actually pretty decent puzzles, some damaging hazards that need to be avoided, and of course plenty of dialogue to be discovered, which is honestly one of the best parts about it. It just has more to it, which honestly is great. But like most RPGs, the gameplay isn't exactly the main reason we're here, is it? Which serves as yet another segue into our next topic. Okay, quick disclaimer, I was going to split this part into talking about the game's visuals and then its story and writing, but well, I had very little to say about its visuals, so I'm just going to quickly go over them. Things look similar to Undertale, but character sprites are more defined, animations have more life to them, there's still the Toby Fox-style doodle-looking models, but overall, it's a direct upgrade from Undertale. You'd be surprised just how much a more stylized look can add to a game, folks. So, with that out of the way, we're this far in, so I think it's time we go over the big one, the story. And by extension, the writing. And oh boy, there's a lot to talk about. So much so that we're going to split the remainder of this segment into several different subsegments. Why? Because I can, so deal with it. Our main trio consists of Chris, Susie, and the aforementioned Prince of Darkness, who is this little guy named Ralsei. Ralsei? I'm just gonna call him Ralsei, who is definitely not Asriel. Nope, not at all. Just ignore the fact that Ralsei is an anagram for Asriel, and while you're at it, ignore the fact that Deltarune is an anagram of Undertale. God fucking damn it, Toby! But I digress. Ralsei is a bright-eyed pacifist who just wants to make friends with everyone. He is also unrelentingly adorable. Like, criminally adorable. He often encourages you to approach fights in a peaceful manner, gives you encouragement, offers you tips during gameplay, and serves as the group's magic user. He's also the one you'll be doing most of the combo acts with during fights, and these can range from putting every single enemy on the map to sleep, convincing them all to stop fighting and become sparable, to a full group heal at the end of the game, and some more. It's honestly pretty fun to see what actions you and Ralsei can take mid-combat, and it gives much more flavor in dialogue than just repeatedly smacking an enemy with a sword would. Don't you worry, Ralsei, I'ma be the best hero you ever done did see. Yes, indeedly do. Oh, he gave me $1. I sucked so bad he gave me $1 out of pity. God fucking damn it. Fun fact, I actually tried to do a kill-only run in this game to see if it changed anything, and I nearly stopped at the tutorial due to Ralsei getting increasingly timid and uncomfortable the more you just endlessly smack the dummy. Of course, it was only after that I learned you can't kill enemies anyway, since they just run away when they lose all their health. So I just took that as an excuse to stop the attempt midway and stop disappointing Ralsei. The little guy might honestly be my favorite character. He's just too damn adorable for me to not love. He's like a fluffy Vivi. Susie is probably my second favorite though. Speaking of which, Susie may start out as a murderous, utterly terrifying monster, whom does nothing but repeatedly attack in every battle you have her, and does not hesitate to remind you just how much of a fuck she does not give. But throughout the entire chapter, she goes through her own transformation. She ends up leaving the main group and joins up with Lancer to fight against you. But, well, they don't do a very good job of that. I'm not going to spoil the entire sequence because honestly, it's pretty darn funny and I'd highly recommend you play the game yourself to see it. To summarize though, Lancer admires Susie for her ability to be an utterly terrifying monster. And the two end up in a sort of big sister, little brother relationship as she tries to teach him to be a better villain. Of course, she's not that great at it herself, but we won't say that out loud, and the development she goes through feels pretty fun to watch. I don't know, I guess I'm just a sucker for the hardened bully finds the soft spot in their heart and doesn't know how the hell to react to a plotline. She became a lot more sympathetic as the game went on, which is impressive considering at the start she was threatening to eat my face. Finally, we have Chris, and honestly, they are what you make of them. They never have any dialogue since they're the faceless, voiceless protagonist we're meant to project our own image onto. However, there are still small moments where their personality seems to shine through. Of course, though, it's impossible to really talk in depth about Chris themselves since they are the faceless protagonist, but I did notice that there are some points where the results of your choices can have Chris doing a few things you didn't really expect. For example, right after Relze gives you a full tutorial of the game's combat, he hands you a manual in case you need reminders of anything. But the manual is illegible because it's so dense with information, so it's a useless item taking up space in your inventory. So, as an avid RPG player who knows just how valuable that single inventory slot can be, you might elect to drop the manual, at which point Relze assumes you must have dropped it by accident and gives it back to you. Okay, Relze, look, I appreciate the sentiment, but I can't use this thing, alright? Look, we'll pick it up again later, let me just... That's not what no, wait, Relze, I didn't mean, that's not what I meant to do. I did not mean to do. There are plenty of other characters for you to meet and enjoy, but these three were the ones that stuck with me the most, and judging by the fucking terabytes of fan art featuring them throughout the internet, I'd say they're the most important to talk about for this review. It was refreshing to see just how different and similar the familiar characters were in this new world, and it was kind of like I was meeting them all over again. Of course, that wasn't the focus of the game, which I appreciate to hell and back because I enjoyed all the new stuff, but it was fun to see these characters again regardless. Oh my fucking god. So Deltarune starts us out with a fairly archetypal story. People from a light/real/outside world somehow find themselves in a new land and are prophesized to be that land's saviors. It's honestly even more archetypal than the humans versus monsters story of Undertale. Though, and I'm not sure if this was the case for anyone else but just me, I got this sneaking suspicion that this was very much done deliberately on Toby's part. I don't know, something about the way the story was set up and how certain events play out make it seem like this is going to end up being much bigger than it appears on the surface. Subversion of expectations seems to be Toby's thing, so I'm just gonna wait to give a full judgment on the plot until we get the entire package fully released. Again, whenever that happens. But for what it is, the first chapter of Deltarune tells a fairly self-contained story, albeit a short one. Susie has her character grow throughout the entire chapter, the world of darkness is introduced, a history between light and dark is hinted at, the climactic showdown with the final boss atop Card Castle is properly built up toward and has a pretty satisfying conclusion, and all the characters you meet along the way are humorous, endearing, and enjoyable in their own way. Overall, it's good. There's plenty of stuff I missed in my first playthrough of the game that I didn't see until I played through it again for this review. There's even a hidden side quest involving gathering key fragments which leads to a secret boss battle, Jevel. And he's a bastard.
I can do anything.
Well, everything except calm the fuck down, evidently. What is this? Oh, sweet Jesus, what is happening? Okay, yeah, these sub-segments are making less sense, but I'm already committed to this bit, so I'm just gonna keep rolling with it. Besides, I've still got some things I want to mention before we're done here, so let's get cracking. The humor of Deltarune's writing, much like its predecessor, is one of its strongest factors, and is largely what I enjoyed so much about it. It's very goofy and dumb in plenty of ways, but there's some genuine wit to a lot of it as well. However, one thing I certainly noticed is Toby really likes to hide jokes in plain sight, and that is very apparent once you start looking a little closer. For instance, this boss fight against a powered-up checker thingy. Of course, its bulging, beefy legs are disturbingly humorous, but there's plenty of other things I didn't pick up on the first time I fought it. Its name is K-Round, crowned, and it's a checker piece that was kinged because it reached the opposite end of the checkerboard map you were on. When I picked up on all of that, my only vocalization was something along the lines of, oh my fuck. To give another example, as you're climbing Card Castle, you come across this guy named...
Rules card.
Okay, that's what I thought. Who is literally named after the rules card of a deck of playing cards. He also happens to be fucking hilarious, and again, I encourage you to play through the game yourself to see why.
Lost, frightened, confused. Good!
Yes, that is actually an I Am Mean reference. Okay, so we're reaching the end of this review, and I got one or two more things I want to go over. First off, though, I did mention a while ago I had one outstanding criticism of the game, at least so far, and that's the music. Nah, don't get me wrong, the music of Deltarune is great. The battle theme, versus Susie, and the Fields of Hopes and Dreams are probably my favorites. However, and I surrender that this is highly subjective, so don't take my word as gospel on this, I didn't really feel like there was any musical track that just leapt out and grabbed me, you know? Like, save for the battle theme, there wasn't any point that felt like the first time I heard Heartache, or Bone Trussle, or Spears of Justice. Again, none of the songs are bad. In fact, they're all pretty good. I just felt like this track wasn't as standout as Undertale's in some ways. However, that may be an unfair comparison to make, since this is only the first chapter of a much bigger game that's still in development. So that's likely to change. Hell, it's already kind of changing now as I listen to the music more and more of the tracks start to grow on me. So again, this is completely subjective and may change with time, but this is the only real criticism I had. Again, at least for now. Actually, speaking of game development, this leads me on to the final point I wanted to go over in this review, and it's something a bit less humorous. So pardon me while we get a bit sentimental. A few days after Deltarune's release, Toby Fox released a twit longer about it and several of the questions many people had for him that he wanted to answer, and it reads as follows. When I made the demo of Undertale, I made it to prove to myself that it was possible to make a whole game alone, with some help with the art. Because I was able to make it in a few months, I felt like I had proved that it was possible. However, making the demo of Deltarune took a few years. So, given the length of the rest of the game and how long I'd be willing to spend on a project, 7 years maximum, I think the answer is that it's actually impossible to make this game. Lots of things make this game harder to make than the last one. The graphics are much more complicated and don't play to my strengths. The battle system is much more complicated due to multiple characters. The overworld and other sections are more complicated due to multiple characters. Having multiple main characters is much harder to write, especially introducing everyone properly in Chapter 1. The entire town had to be created correctly on the first try to set up properly for the rest of the game, and further things outside of those. Essentially, it's not possible to make this game as one person, and Timmy. However, it might be possible to create the game if I'm able to make a team. So I'm going to try making a team, because I really want to make this. But I may not be able to succeed because I have no experience successfully directing a team, and I have no idea who I'm going to work with. Since I haven't started assembling the team yet, I have absolutely no estimation of its completion. It could take up to 999 years depending on the efficiency level. I don't know anything about what consoles or anything it'll come out for because by the time it does come out, we might be on PlayStation 14 or something. For the past 3 years, I've been waking up in the middle of the night unable to go back to sleep because I've been thinking about the scenes that happen in the game, even though so many details are still hazy. I really want to show you the things I've been thinking about. That's really my only reason for making this game. If I don't show you what I'm thinking, I'll lose my mind. It was actually a totally selfish motivation. By the way, I was really worried at first about making this. The expectations for my next work would be really high. So high that I knew no matter what I did, I felt like people would be underwhelmed. If you played Undertale, I don't think I can make anything that makes you feel that way again. However, it's possible I can make something else. It's just something simple, but maybe you'll like it. See you in years, okay? Don't forget. So with all that in mind, I want to take a moment to speak directly to Toby Fox for a second. I have no idea if he'll ever hear this or watch this in any way, but fuck it, I just want to do this. When you say you don't think you can make people feel that way again, I completely agree. Undertale is Undertale, and there's not going to be another game like it. In fact, continuing to chase that same feeling that people experienced the first time they played any game is what ends up ruining a lot of franchises in the long run. So, honestly, I think you did something really smart in trying to go after something new instead of trying to just relive the past. I feel like though you didn't want to leave it behind, which is why you kinda made it more of an alternate universe story than just a completely new story entirely, which again, I think was a good decision. I have to admit, I was really confused when I started this game because I had no idea what was going on, but as I started to play through it again, I kinda stopped caring because the new stuff we had, the focus on light and dark, on Ralsei, Susie, and Chris and their adventures was honestly really friggin' good. So while you may not be able to make anybody feel that way again, I can guarantee you that judging by just how fast this game has taken off, you not only have matched what Undertale meant for a lot of people, but in many ways, I think you exceeded it. Myself and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of other people fell in love with the new characters that you made, and you've very much piqued our curiosity when it comes to the new story that you have in mind. Honestly, I'm willing to wait. I don't care how long it takes. So long as you can make this really good, take all the time you need. I know I can't speak for everybody, but I can at least say that I'm patient. I'm not going anywhere. As great as Undertale was, I feel like while I was playing through this game, there was a certain energy to it, you know? A certain passion and drive that I could just feel. Something that I didn't get from the first game. I can tell you really, really want to finish this game, and I have a feeling you're going to find a way to do so. I've completely ad-libbed this last part, by the way, because I don't really think I could properly describe in words why it is I really feel the way I do about Deltarune and Undertale. I honestly can't put it to words, because I don't know. But the one thing I do know is that both games inspired me in a lot of different ways. Undertale inspired me to get back into writing, and a couple years later, I injected a bit of that writing into my XCOM War the Chosen series. Hell, my robot avatar character is actually inspired by Undertale. Well, that and Mega Man. Deltarune actually inspired me to make my very first review of the game because I felt that strongly about it. I have no idea if I could ever do it any kind of justice, but I mean, hopefully I did. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this. If not, well then I fucked up, didn't I? So all that sentimental rambling aside, you've got this, Toby. And I know I'll be here waiting, and I'm willing to wait for as long as it takes. Take your time, don't rush, and don't feel pressured to get this out sooner. This game is oozing with potential, seething with it, radiating with it even. And I can tell that this is something that you've really wanted to make for a long time. And you know what? Apparently I'm not the only one who picked up on this. I'm gonna go ahead and stop now because I have no idea where I'm going with this, but I'll just go ahead and say I'm looking forward to it. I don't know if I'm gonna make another video on it when it fully comes out, whenever that happens, again, because I feel like I've already explained to the best of my abilities my thoughts on it, and by extension, my thoughts on its predecessor. But you never know, things could change, and I may have more to talk about on the day it finally comes out, so we'll see. Either way, I guess that's all I got, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. So, to revisit that question at the beginning of the video, is Deltarune Undertale 2? In some ways, yes. It does what a good sequel should do, but it is a complete departure from what we've seen before, and I am personally completely okay with that. I was actually one of the many people that didn't want an actual sequel to Undertale. I just wanted to see what else Mr. Fox could make, and I'm so far extremely impressed. So we'll see what comes after this. Hopefully though, you all have enjoyed watching, and hopefully I have done this game plenty of justice. Well, that's all I got, folks. This is my very first review, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing, but hopefully you all enjoyed. Regardless, though, I appreciate you all for watching. And, as always, y'all have a lovely evening, and I'll see you next time.